Okay, we'll get started. I know you've got better things to do on a Wednesday night than to listen to me talk about work experience, but I thought it was a really good opportunity to give you a bit of an overview of what's happening in 2025. There have been a few changes due to insurance issues. Seems to happen every year that things change. So thought I'd just run you through the process. The way it'll work tonight, I'll just do a little bit of a presentation, show you where you can find resources, talk you through the steps. Then I've got a section about frequently asked questions, the sort of questions that I'm asked fairly regularly. If anyone would like to ask some additional questions, please do it in the Q&A, and I'll get to that probably at the end, because I'm doing this by myself, so I don't have someone else that can be monitoring that for me at the same time. So welcome, and we'll get started. So where can you find information about work experience? So all of Year 10 have a Careers Google Classroom, which is called HSC 2027. That indicates the year that the current Year 10s would do their HSC if they were to stay at school for the Year 11 and Year 12, and they have their own careers classroom. So all of them should have joined that. They've been prompted probably 30 times over the last 3 years, so hopefully everyone's in that. And within that classroom, under the classwork section, there is a topic called work experience. And in that, I scheduled it to go in at about 7 p.m. tonight. I have the different steps. So there's 6 steps that you sort of need to go through from beginning to end, and they're all listed in the classroom. So that's where all the information that I'll talk about tonight can be found. So how is it organised? That's the first question that I'm normally asked. So the students are required to make the initial contact with the employer to arrange to get some work experience forms filled out for insurance purposes. The main benefit behind the students making the contact is that many students haven't had, sometimes it's a little bit awkward speaking to a potential employer about doing work experience. This is a really safe way for you to make that first step. So you're really well supported with that. The fact that you're on here with your parents means that you've got really supportive parents. I'm also there to walk you through any of the steps. I also have in the classroom, there's a link to a document which actually shows you what a sample telephone conversation could look like, and the things that you should do to prepare before you make that phone call. So it's really important that the student actually makes the contact. So I'm asked this question all the time: why do I insist on that rather than it be the parent or myself? Employers tell me on a daily basis how it drives them crazy when the student doesn't make the contact, when the parent does it on their behalf. By the student doing it, it's showing the employer that the student is keen. It's not the parent pushing them to do it. It's not the school pushing them to do it, that the student has a genuine interest in that job. Having said that, more than happy and encourage parents to help with that. So, you know, you might have a family contact, for example, and this happens a lot. Often a parent will ring that person and say, hey, are you cool with me giving your number to Jack so that he can contact you about work experience? So that's fine. It's fine if a parent does a preliminary sort of phone call. Have no issue with that at all. But it's really important that the student actually makes that contact. As I said, employers speak to me about this literally on a daily basis. So sometimes, however, although I want the student to make the contact, sometimes you might have an employer say, and this is normally with larger organisations, you might have the employer say, yeah, that's fine, but I need your school to contact me. And that's fine. You've still made that initial contact. You would then get in contact with me and give me the details, and I would then contact that employer. So what are the steps? So the very first step is I have a document which is called Introduction to Work Experience, which is listed as step 1 in the Google Classroom. Now, everything you need to know pretty much will be in that document, and it has lots of different hyperlinks to other documents as well. For example, that telephone conversation that I was talking about. It sort of is a bit of a general overview of the system, and it's really important that the students read it and also share it with their parents so that the parents can read it as well. But it sort of summarizes the whole process and the reasons why doing work experience. Actually, that's something that I haven't put in the frequently asked questions. Is it compulsory to do work experience? No, it's not. It's definitely optional. And lots of students won't do work experience for lots of different reasons. One being that there's nothing in particular they want to try in year 10. So they might look at doing something in year 11 in the school holidays, for example. And then there's some jobs that it's just impossible to do work experience, which we'll get to in a minute. So the next step is step 2. So what happens, so this is a requirement that you need to do an online course. It's on a website called My Work Experience. I'm giving you the heads up, it's pretty dated, but it's a requirement that has to be done in preparation to do work experience. So even if you're not thinking about doing work experience now, I'd encourage you during home group. I might actually put it as a task for everyone to do next Tuesday. Just do it during coaching. I tend to try and put careers information in your Google Classroom on a Tuesday morning during coaching. So I think I might do that for next Tuesday, just to encourage you to do it. It's done then. It is important that you download your certificate, because when you do eventually organise work experience, I need a copy of that certificate. So make sure you download it once you've finished that. But it only takes, it'll take you, like I've said, 15 to 30 minutes. Unlikely to take you more than 15 minutes. It doesn't take long at all. And it's really basic. So step 3 is what we call the pre-placement pack. So in the Google Classroom, this document here, which is called the pre-placement pack, that's just the cover page for it. There's a copy of that in the classroom, and it has hyperlinks in it as well. But what you need to do once you're ready to do the placement is come and get one of the packs. So that second image there, so everything you will need for work experience as far as forms are concerned will be in a plastic slip, and it's on, and if we look at the third image, so that's the bookcase outside the front of my office, and then that little box there, that's where the placement packs are kept. So if you ever come to get one and I'm not there, you can just grab one out of that pack there. Out of that box. And in that, it has that cover sheet, which is that first image. The next thing that's in there is the student placement record. So that's the document that needs to be taken to the employer to get them to fill out for insurance purposes. Before you take it to the employer, and don't worry about remembering all of this, it's all listed very clearly on the cover sheet. The student needs to fill out their section, which is section 1. And the parents need to fill out their section, which is on the back page. And I recommend you do that before you take it to the employer. The employer then fills out page 2 and page 3, and they sign it. And then you need to get that back, okay? And it needs to have the student signature, the parent signature, and the employer's signature. There's a place for me to sign, but I cannot sign it until everything is complete. Because it's a legal document, and I'm signing it saying that I agree with everything that's been put into that document. So it's important that I can't do that until I'm the very last step. So step 4 is that you need to return that pack. So, and this bit's really important. So if you return the pack and you haven't got all the documents completed, you will get an email from me that'll say, come and get it and get it finished. I don't have time to chase up individual signatures and those sorts of things. So you literally will get an email from me to say, you've done a great job so far, but it's not finished, or you're missing this, please come and get it and fill it out. If you ever come to give it to me and I'm not there, you will see that image there on that screen. So I have two different signs on my door. One is the pickup zone and one's the drop-off zone, and there's a little hook to the left of the sign. So if I'm not there, never leave it on my desk. Don't put it under the door. Don't put it on the bookcase. It's really important that you hang it on that hook because it's safe there. You know, if you put it under my door, for example, then someone may pick it up and put it somewhere where and then I may not see it. So that's the safest way to do it. Best to give it to me in person, but if I'm not there, and I'm often not there because I may be on a careers excursion or I might be chasing another student, etc., then just hang it on that hook. So that's step 4, is bringing that information back. Another important part about step 4 is that I need all of that pre-placement pack back to me at least 2 weeks before a placement. Now, the reason for that is that once you return that information, I then have to enter all that information into a database. I have to check that we're happy with you to go to that employer, that we think you'll be safe there, that we think it's going to be a great experience, etc. And it gives me just a little bit of time to chase up anything that may be missing. So those 2 weeks, make sure you keep that in mind when you're negotiating with an employer. So say, for example, tomorrow you were really keen and you wanted to organise something for next week. That can't happen because I need the documents back 2 weeks beforehand, okay? Sorry, step 5. So step 5, once you've handed in the pre-placement pack, what happens is as soon as I've approved it, which means that I've checked that we've got all the correct documentation. If, for example, you were doing it in construction and you needed a white card, that there's a copy of your white card in there, that we've got your certificate for that online course that you were meant to do, etc., etc. Once I have all that, I can then sign it off, enter it into the system. From there, you will get an email from me, which will say, you know, congratulations, been approved, these are the dates, and it will also say, please come and pick up your placement pack. So your pre-placement pack is the pack you need before, like, to organise it. And then the placement pack is what you need for when you go on work experience. And in that pack, there is a work experience journal and there is a work experience evaluation form. So there's 2 things in that. And I will hang that on the pickup zone on my door. So as soon as I do it, I hang it up there. You get the email. Hopefully when you come, I'm there to actually give it to you. But if not, it will be on that door anyway. So that's really important. The other thing that happens there is that your work experience is entered into Compass. So that's another way to confirm that it's all been approved. If it's not in Compass, the approval hasn't gone through. Okay, so that's really important that you understand that. Once those things have happened, you're right to go. Okay, so you're pretty much ready to go. You've got everything you need, and then you'll go and have a great experience. Typically, what happens when you are on work experience, I will call the employer on the Monday just to check that you're there, and I then try and negotiate a time to come and visit you, typically on a Thursday. Sometimes that's not possible for a few different reasons, and if that's not possible, I just make a phone call on the Thursday. Depending on what work experience it is, you might be doing a trade, for example, and you might be moving between different sites and it just doesn't suit the employer for me to come. But I will definitely have a conversation with the employer on that day, whether it's in person or via phone. I try to physically get there as much as I can. The last step in the process is once you have completed your placement, you need to send an email, like a thank you, to your employer. And I always ask you to make sure you CC me in this. And this, again, all this information is in that pre-placement doc. And then I also like you to book an appointment to come and see me, to come and tell me about your work experience. I normally talk to you on the Thursday anyway, but good to see how the week finished. And you can hand in your documents to me then. Once you've handed in your journal/diary and your evaluation sheet, then we can issue you a certificate. We're sort of moving a bit away from certificates because no one actually ever uses them for anything, but it's good for me to have follow-up with you about your work experience anyway. So that's why it's really good to have a quick meeting about it, to see if you enjoyed it, if it's something you think you want to pursue a bit further down the track. You might have really enjoyed it. You might be looking at leaving at the end of year 10 to secure an apprenticeship. Then we can talk about next steps, etc. So these are the most common questions I get asked. So how many work experience placements can I do? So the general rule is 1, okay? So, however, I will approve work experience placements for any students that have, I will approve several work experience placements for any students that have indicated to me that they're hoping to secure an apprenticeship at the end of year 10, because we know from, years and years of doing this, that the majority of apprenticeships come from work experience. So if you're looking at securing an apprenticeship at the end of year 10 and you haven't already had a meeting with me, you need to make sure you do that, and do that pretty soon. I will keep a note of that. And then if you want to try a few different things that you're considering to doing post year 10, then we can definitely organise that. And even if you do one early in the year with an employer that you're really keen to work with, and that employer may indicate to you that at the end of the year they're looking at putting on an apprentice, then we would try and get you back with that employer a bit later in the year when they're really thinking about it. So because they may have had 3 or 4 different work experience students since you did it early term 2, for example, and they might have students doing work experience with them in term 3 and term 4, they're front and center of their mind. So we'd really like to get you back in front of that employer. So very happy to approve several work experience placements for anyone that's looking at securing an apprenticeship. If you're looking to do year 11, year 12, I sometimes, under exceptional circumstances, I will approve more than one, but generally it's only one. When can you do work experience? So with work experience, traditionally, and lots of the parents may be in a situation where when they're at school, everyone in year 10 went and did work experience at the one time. So we don't do it that way for a number of reasons. Number one, we don't do it that way because that's assuming that all students are ready at the same time, and we know they're not. Some students are very much work ready and very much will get lots of benefit out of it. Other students aren't at that point at the same time as everyone else. Some students have no intention of doing work experience, and us saying, right, everyone has to go out at a particular week, they are literally going to be wasting employers' time and their own time doing something just for the sake of doing it. So, and another reason why we do it on a rolling basis is that, say, for example, there was one particular employer that 5 of our students wanted to go to. If we're only doing it at one particular week, then 4 kids are going to be really disappointed. Whereas this way, hopefully all 5 would get to do it over the course of a year. So they're the main reasons why we do it this way. So pretty much you can organise it for any time that suits you and the employer. So when you're approaching the employer about work experience, you need to have some dates in mind, okay? When you're thinking about dates that you might like to do it, make sure you can't organise it for a week that you've already had notification that you've got an assessment task for. So you need to check with your teachers about that before you organise that. And you're also required to catch up on any work that you miss that your teacher deems necessary. So it's not like you're going to have to catch up on a whole week's of schoolwork while you're away, but there might be a particular chapter or some exercises that your teacher says, look, I know you're going to be away for that week, but can you make sure you just get these things done in the week that you're away? So you need to keep that in mind as well. The other thing, when you contact an employer about when you want to do it, as I said, have a couple of dates in mind that might suit you. Please make sure you say, however, our school is super flexible, so when would suit you best? Typically, I normally get students to lead with that, to say when would be a good time that suits you. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I don't know, you tell me. And then that's why it's good that you have some dates so that you can say, well, what about this date? So that's really important to understand that as well. Can you do work experience in the family business? The short answer is yes, but I don't encourage it. The reason I don't encourage it is one of the main reasons that you're doing work experience is to try something new that you don't know a lot about. Typically, you could always work in your family business in the school holidays, or just pick your parents' brain. And plus, you would know a fair bit about the family business by being part of the family as well. Work experience is an opportunity to try something that sounds interesting, but you don't know a lot about. So although yes, the answer is yes, you can in theory, think very carefully about whether that's a good choice for you. Can you do work experience outside of Wagga? So yes, you can. Being a boarding school, lots of our students do work experience in their hometowns, and that's not an issue at all. You're also allowed to do work experience at other locations. However, if you're not going to be living at home during the placement, so say, for example, you've organised a placement in Sydney or Melbourne, for example, then that can absolutely happen, but there's an extra step that has to happen with that, an extra form that needs to be filled out. And once that form's filled out, I then need to send that off. I need to email that off to get approval for that to happen. I've never had it knocked back. So it's unlikely that it would be knocked back. But you need to keep in mind that I need to submit that 4 weeks in advance. So if you're now thinking that, you know, you've got a family contact, for example, at a really cool job somewhere outside of Wagga, that's great. Start doing that legwork straight away and make sure you let me know that it's going to be away from Wagga even before you start getting it organised, so that I can give you the additional form that needs to be filled out for that. This is controversial. So are there any types of jobs that I can't do? So there's jobs that are prohibited. There's some jobs that are restricted, and there are some jobs that are neither prohibited or restricted, but are very hard to get work experience in. So for example, think of like a doctor. Obviously, for confidentiality reasons, they're not going to have a 15, 16-year-old sitting with them in a consult room in their practice. Okay, so although it's not prohibited and it's not restricted, the chances of that happening are pretty unlikely. So there's a really comprehensive list on page 1. There's a link on page 1 of the Introduction to Work Experience document that will take you to the current list of prohibited and restricted activities. So they're things that probably make sense, as in they're high risk activities. So a few examples of those, and I have an issue with the one on farms, but I'll speak about that in a minute. But working at heights, so anything that requires you to be above 2 meters, like you can't do that. So if you were looking at doing roofing, for example, you absolutely can't do that for work experience. Excavation, you can do excavation, but you're not allowed to be in any machinery that's working. So therefore, makes no sense to do that. Farms is another example. So I come from a rural background, and this is one of my bugbears. I hate that you can't do this, but it's all for insurance purposes, and it's not a restriction we've put on. It's the insurance provider has put this restriction on. So in theory, you can do work experience on a farm. However, these are the activities you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to drive machinery. You're not allowed to use chemicals. You're not allowed to work with livestock. So I don't actually know what you would be doing if you can't do those 3 things on work experience. So pretty much farms are out. Having said that, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Aon. So they're a really large multinational insurance company. And so they actually have private work experience cover that you can purchase. So say, for example, you were very keen to do work experience on a farm, then you could look into purchasing private work experience through Aon. It then doesn't go through the school, but so we can't list it as work experience on Compass, but we would list it as other approved school activity. So you wouldn't be marked absent. It won't affect your attendance record, but we can't list it as work experience for insurance purposes. But if you were to go down that path, then that, you know, that is something that's worth investigating if the thing you want to do is not possible through our insurance policy. So this next list, so these, anything working with animals, including like even the local vet, anything in the mining industry and any sort of work in an abattoir, those things are allowed with special approval. And that's not my approval. Again, that's another example of something that I have to send a form off 4 weeks in advance to get special approval for that to happen. And there's a heap of extra paperwork. So those things can happen, but just be aware that there is extra paperwork that needs to happen for that to be approved. So if you're thinking about doing work experience in any of those 3 categories, make sure you get in contact with me so that I can give you the appropriate forms that need to be filled out. How do I find an employer? So the main way is using family contacts, using contacts through sporting groups that you might be part of, literally Googling companies to see, you know, what's around. If stuck, come and see me. I can give you some ideas about people that you can contact, but we really like work experience. I sort of feel like over the next couple of years, you're lucky you're in year 10 now, because I think within 2 years there probably will be no work experience due to insurance constraints and the extra paperwork that we are requiring employers to fill out because of the insurance issues. Employers are literally just going to say it's all too hard, but you're still able to do it. So often employers aren't as keen anymore to take on work experience students due to it's more work for them than it has ever been in the past. So using family contacts or contacts you have through sporting groups or whatever definitely will help you. Another thing I'll say about that though too is this happened quite a few years ago, but say for example, so I had a student who got work experience with Adrian Zumbo, like he was master chef, you know, he's massive big pastry cook, pastry chef. And when she brought the forms into me, I just assumed that she must have had a family connection or something. And I said, oh, you know, how'd you get that? Like, that's amazing. And she said, I literally emailed him. So the reason I tell that story is sometimes people think, oh God, I'm never going to get in there because I don't know anyone. Okay, it's still worth the trying, because the absolute worst case scenario is they're going to say no. Often with places like that, you need to have a connection, but sometimes you don't. So, you know, if you've got something that you're really super keen to do, definitely try. Like, absolutely try. Worst thing that can happen is that they say no. Okay, so this is a newer addition to the work experience. Can you do virtual work experience? Yes, you can. And there's a couple of super interesting programs that you can have a look at. So just as an example, so the Year 13 website, they actually have a whole section on virtual work experience. So lots of different companies that run different virtual work experience programs. The CSIRO have a really good program for anyone that's interested in STEM, and that's a virtual work experience as well. We had a student last year do work experience in game design. So, and the way that worked, there were lots of different students from around the state. It was a particular week. It was all via Teams. And so they would do things via Teams, then they'd be given a task and they'd go off Teams and try and get that task done. Then they'd come back onto Teams and share their experiences and things like that. So there's lots of different ways that virtual work experience works, but it's definitely worth having a look. And the way you can find virtual work experience, literally just Googling virtual work experience and a heap of things will come up. But I will put a copy of this presentation in your Google Classroom as well. And there's links to those 3 as an example. I'm always here to help, obviously. So if you've got any questions, you can come and see me. You can send me an email. Parents can give me a call. That's my direct number. But that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I'll just check and see if we've got any questions in the chat. which I can't see any. But that's all I needed to say at this point. As I said, get onto your Google Classroom. All the information is in there now. And yeah, have any questions, reach out to me either via email or come and see me. If you come to see me and I'm not there, just send me a quick email saying that you tried to catch up, I wasn't there, when can we catch up? You all know how to make a booking to come and see me as well. But if anyone's got any questions, you can throw them in the chat now. Otherwise, feel free to go and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. Oh, I will also put a recording in the classroom as well. Okay, so I've had a question just saying, if Worksperience is already organised, do we still need further paperwork? I might, so for it to go through school, I need the paperwork. Okay, so if you mean they've already done a placement and I have the paperwork and they want to do extra, so maybe it might be worth, I'm just going to throw my email address in here. If that person can maybe send me an email with a more, like, be a little bit more specific so I can answer your question correctly, because I don't want to just assume that I've answered that. So that's my email address in the chat. Oh, it's on the screen anyway. Whilst funds may not be an option. Okay, really good question. Whilst farms may not be an option, is agronomy an option? Yes, absolutely. Agronomy is an option. We regularly have students do work experience with agronomists. Not the same question, but sort of similar. I often get questions about stock and station agents. That's a little bit trickier due to they can do it, but when they go to the sale yards, they can't be like in the actual yards. But if that's something that someone was interested in, we definitely need to have a conversation about that. I think I've answered those questions. But yeah, feel free to just jump out whenever you're ready. I'll wait till no one's left, just in case some more questions come up.